Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I'm Jackie Armstrong-Hominick, the MLA for Fort Saskatchewan-Vegreville, and the chair of ACWAR, the Advisory Council on Alberta-Ukraine Relations. I'm also humbled to be the MLA for the largest Ukrainian population in Alberta and a descendant of the first Ukrainian settlers in Canada. I look forward to a productive discussion today on the current situation in Ukraine. Thank you, Premier Kenney, for all your support for Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, both now and in your previous federal ministerial roles. I would also like to recognize former Premier Ed Stelmach and Arisia Boychuk, President of the UCC Alberta chapter, and thank you for all your tireless contributions to the Ukrainian community. I have a warm welcome for Alexander Danilenko, Consul General of Ukraine in Edmonton, who will be providing us an update on the situation in Ukraine. I will now turn the podium over to Alexander Danilenko.
Thank you, Jackie. Honorable Premier Kenney, Ministers, MLAs, dear Ukrainian Canadians, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank you for your initiative of organizing this roundtable and for giving me this opportunity to meet you and to provide you with the latest information on the development of the very scarce situation in Ukraine. Let me start with the reminder that Russian aggression started not with the latest violent actions of Mr. Putin. It started 8 years ago with the occupation of Ukrainian Crimea and the initiation and incitement of the bloody conflict in eastern Ukraine. These 8 years of Russian aggression cost us huge price. We lost billions of dollars due to the occupations and economic decline caused by Russian actions. We lost about 7% of our territory. But what the most painful thing is that we lost about 15,000 lives of Ukrainians. About 40,000 people were wounded. Our country will experience consequences of this conflict for decades. This unbearable pain and unmeasurable humanitarian price for us, Ukrainians, and for all normal people. But not for Mr. Putin. He is ready to put millions of lives of innocent people in danger just for his imperial ambitions to renew Russian empire, to destroy our country as a state. He wants to erase the 42 million people nation from the world map. Unbelievable. If you think this is strong wording, listen to his latest interview where he denies our very right to exist as a nation, as a state. And he thinks that this maniacal goals justifies any methods and any price. You probably know the latest development of the situation. This situation development is very fast. And what I was going to say yesterday, it's obsolete today. And the situation is getting worse, worse, and worse. And right now it's very critical. They concentrated, Russia, they concentrated about 150,000 troops at the border of Ukraine with the heavy weapons, with the mobile hospitals, with the blood banks. And they call it military exercises. If you do the regular routine exercises, you don't prepare the hospitals, you don't prepare the blood banks at these locations. So what I would like to say that they are ready to begin bloody, unprovoked, and unjustified war. Unbelievable. We are talking about this in 21st century. Unfortunately, Ukraine is in the security vacuum today. We are not member of any defensive alliance. Russia ignores all the treaties they signed, all obligations they took. It's very sad and frightening that in the 21st century, one country can unjustifiably and unlawfully terrorize another one without fear of serious consequences. That the president of the UN Security Council member state can say that democratic country in the center of Europe with a population of 42 million people and 1,000 years long history doesn't even have the right to exist. If it's not madness, I don't know how to call it. If you don't stop Russia now, it will undermine the whole system of world security and stability. Putin is now testing the world for weakness. He will go as far as we let him. So, what can stop him? Quick, coordinated, and strong response from the international society. We understand that no country will send its troops to fight in Ukraine and for Ukraine. We understand that we should fight for our freedom ourselves, and we are ready to do that. But let us remember that this fight is not only for Ukraine. This fight is for the security and stability in Europe, for the justice and democratic values in the whole world. So Ukraine urgently needs quick and effective assistance and coordinated actions from our friends and partners in 4 main directions. First, strong and coordinated economic sanctions on Russia. Second, we urgently need modern weapons and military equipment. I want to underline defensive weapons. We are not going to attack any country, any neighbors. We just want to defend our country. We want to live peacefully on our land. And third, we need effective economic support. Russia do everything possible to destroy our economy, to make war in Ukraine without war, to make everything possible just to stop our economy working. So we're just asking our partners to start. We are not talking only about some economic grants or credits. We are talking about starting some kind of long-term programs, projects to support our economy, to let it survive in these circumstances. And last but not least, humanitarian assistance. It's a crucial matter for Ukraine and Ukrainian people. I already gave you some figures. We have tens of thousands wounded people, hundreds of thousands military men who returned from the war and have urgent needs for physical and mental rehabilitation. We have millions of displaced people who also need humanitarian help. As the UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs estimates, 2.9 million people in Ukraine will need humanitarian support in 2022. And all this only if Putin abandons his insane plans. If not, the number of such people will increase many times. So, humanitarian aid is a vital matter for our country today. And concluding my remarks, I would like to thank you all again for the strong and continuous support for Ukraine, and we feel it every day. Canada on the federal level already provided us a very substantial and very valuable support, economic support, military support, sent us defensive equipment. And with understanding that the sanctions and the military assistance are the matter of the federal government, I would like to appeal to the provincial government, to the Ukrainian community here in Alberta, to provide us with any kind of assistance that is in your capacity to help our country and our people at this critical time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexander. And now, Premier Kenney, if I could have you come up to the podium.
Thank you, Дякую. Добрий день. Thank you, MLA Armstrong Homeniuk, for your chairmanship of the Alberta Ukrainian Advisory Committee. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for that passionate and timely update on the critical situation facing Ukraine. Thank you, former Premier Stelmach and ministers, MLAs. members and leaders of the Ukrainian-Canadian community here in Alberta. We wanted to convene this meeting to get a real-time update on the crisis facing Ukraine and its territorial integrity, its sovereignty. Alberta, of course, has a special place in its heart for Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, having benefited from hundreds of thousands of Albertans of Ukrainian origin who helped to build this province, creating deep and abiding ties, human and emotional, but also real and active ties between Alberta and Ukraine. And so we are deeply concerned and share your disbelief at the situation unfolding as a result of Vladimir Putin's aggression. It is no secret that Ukraine has suffered from decades and centuries of efforts at Russification, at the denial of the existence of the unique Ukrainian language and culture and its national aspirations. And of course, for 7 decades of the last century, lived under Soviet occupation, lived through one of the greatest crimes in all of human history, the Holodomor, which was motivated by Moscow's desire to crush the Ukrainian nation, the Ukrainian peasant farmer class, and 10 million people were victims in that one of the greatest crimes of human history. Canadians need to understand that Vladimir Putin and his henchmen in Moscow have always regarded Ukraine as merely a province of Russia, as what they call Little Russia. And the very existence of a modern, democratic, sovereign Ukraine is something of a miracle of history, something that we all as human beings have a responsibility to defend and protect. Because as the Consul General said, if Vladimir Putin succeeds in his effort to invade and crush Ukraine, where does he end? If the democratic world will not come together with strength to stop this Russian aggression, where and when does it end? We are standing on the precipice of what could become the single largest act of military aggression and armed conflict in Europe since 1945. And so I know there are many here in Alberta and in Canada who think that this is some distant conflict in which we have no interest and which we should ignore. That would be a terrible mistake, because aggression invites more aggression. And destabilization of the world order is what Vladimir Putin has always benefited from. So, Your Excellency, please understand that the government, and I believe the people of Alberta, stand in solidarity with Ukraine and the people of Ukraine at this moment of great challenge. We should recall that Canada was the first Western country to recognize Ukraine's independence following the referendum in 1992, when Prime Minister Prime Minister Mulroney was the first to recognize that independence. And Ukraine was given security guarantees by the NATO member states at the Budapest Accord with the denuclearization of Ukraine, that the West would be there to protect Ukraine from any potential invasion. That was the condition of Ukrainian denuclearization. And Ukraine has every right to remind the Western world of that. As Canada's Minister of National Defence, I deployed the Canadian Armed Forces to Ukraine for the first time ever in Operation Unifier to help to train and better prepare Ukrainian troops for Russian aggression. And for 7 years, as a result of that operation, thousands and thousands of Ukrainian soldiers, officers, enlisted men have received world-class training in an important reform and westernization of Ukrainian military tactics. I also deployed large amounts of military equipment to Ukraine and provided critical high-resolution, real-time radar satellite imagery that was helpful, President Poroshenko told me, in defensive tactics during incursions by Russian-backed terrorists and separatists in Luhansk and Donetsk. But now Canada has to step up in a bigger way, given the more obvious and violent aggression. And so I call on the Government of Canada to spare no effort in providing all necessary military equipment, humanitarian support, and also the strongest possible sanctions. Let me say that there is a dimension of Putin's aggression which has a real relevance to Alberta, and that is around energy security. Russia has the world's third largest proven and probable oil reserves. Alberta has the world's third largest proven and probable reserves. And so let me speak very bluntly to our friends and partners in the United States. President Biden, a year ago, arbitrarily and retroactively vetoed the Keystone XL pipeline that would have delivered over 800,000 barrels a day of responsibly produced oil to help fuel the American economy. Today, the United States imports over 800,000 barrels a day of oil from Vladimir Putin's Russia, enriching the Russian treasury to finance Putin's aggression. This makes no sense as a matter of national security or of energy security. And so I call on Prime Minister Trudeau to pick up the phone and call the President and say it is time to move away from from financing Russian aggression through these massive energy imports. Canada can be the solution to that. That may not be an immediate solution to the current prospective invasion, but we need to play a long game just as Vladimir Putin has over the past decade since his invasion of Crimea and eastern Ukraine. So Alberta can play a critical role in displacing Russian oil and energy exports, which are the basis of the wealth of Putin's state, which finances his military aggression. And we are eager and willing to work with the U.S. administration to play that role, to be a secure, democratic source of critical energy that can help the world turn away from its growing dependence, including Europe, the lifting of sanctions on Nord Stream 2, yet another sign of weakness that will put Western Europe under even greater Russian influence at the worst possible time, while also hurting Ukraine's energy security and future economy. Finally, let me say that while the government of Alberta doesn't have a military or an international development program, we do feel strongly that we want to show sign of solidarity to the people of Ukraine at this time. So I'm pleased to announce that Alberta's government is providing $1 million in funding to the Ukrainian Canadian Foundation to support humanitarian relief efforts. And Your Excellency, I'm eager to sit down with you and to see if there's other practical ways in which we can provide practical assistance in addition to our strongest possible moral support. So with that, thank you, and I now look forward to hearing from my predecessor, a great Albertan of Ukrainian origin, the Honorable Ed Stelmach. Slava Ukraini.
Well, it's pretty difficult to follow that because you kind of knocked all of us back with the size of the support for the humanitarian aid this morning. And I get these updates every day from the Ukrainian Canadian Congress National. And as you said, the war is far from Alberta, and we're comfortable here other than the weather. But and I was looking at it, and the soldier killed yesterday happened to be Alexander Steinmach. So, of course, the call's coming home, any relative. No relative, but it just hit home, to see the same name. Premier, ministers, honorary council, all members of the Ukrainian community, and those that have came to join this particular roundtable and the announcement. I want to thank you wholeheartedly, Premier, for taking this leadership role. Not only your experience as a former Minister of Defense, and member of federal cabinet, and knowing the Ukraine situation quite well, dating back a number of years ago. But clearly, this sets a target that other provinces can work towards, because the humanitarian aid will keep increasing. And our goal from the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, and Arisha will give more information following me, is one, to create an awareness campaign. Why should you, as an Albertan, be concerned and support the humanitarian aid and support other sanctions against Putin? The number of disabled, the number of people that are living in a zone that have lost their pension, most of these are female-headed homes and houses that they're in that area that it's neither Ukraine nor Russian. Also, the number of younger women, single girls that are exposed to human trafficking. These are all serious matters, humanitarian. And that doesn't talk about the number of disabled that also need the support, and the number of refugees. So we want to create an awareness campaign so that we communicate this right across Alberta to every community and ask for support. Second is talk about the humanitarian aid, what's the best way of getting money into the hands of those that need it most without losing it to bureaucracies. And the third, and we don't know how deep this invasion will go, is how do we prepare for what may be a number of refugees looking for a new home? How can we integrate them into Alberta society? Because there are already, as Alexander said, a number of displaced people looking for homes. And we've done it in the past. We've done it at the end of martial law in Poland. We opened up Alberta. We did it for Bosnia a number of years ago. We have the organizations. It's just a matter of putting it all together and prepare, because it's not going to get any better. And of course, because tied to Ukraine as a descendant of grandparents that arrived here as serfs over 120 years ago. But it just, you can't watch and see someone inflict this pain, needless pain, treachery, just on populations that have nothing to do. They're not aggressive. They're peace-loving people wanting to enjoy independence and a civil society. So I appeal to everyone today for your support. And once again, thank you. I can tell you, when we were talking about this at the table, we didn't think that we would get such incredible support. Thank you, Premier. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Premiers. I'm in the best spot in the world between the two greatest Premiers around. Next, I'll call on Arisha Boychuk to give a small presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Premier. Thank you very, very much. On behalf of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, Alberta Provincial Council, we are deeply, deeply honored to be here and to be part of this announcement, and hearing that you have contributed $1 million towards humanitarian aid to Ukraine. This is an incredible gift. It definitely has superseded all of our expectations today, and we're very grateful for this part of the presentation. Ukrainian Canadian Congress, Alberta Provincial Council had established a Alberta Stands with Ukraine campaign a few weeks ago, and a committee of leaders came together and have been meeting. And one of our priorities, the number one priorities, is to support Canada-Ukraine Foundation and to support the humanitarian aid in Ukraine. So this truly is a great step. It's a great step forward for us in Alberta, and we should be very proud of this. Our priority also is, as Premier Stelmach had indicated, is an information awareness campaign to help inform and create an Alberta-centric information place where people can come and be informed. We've developed a speakers bureau, we've developed a website, and where we're providing the latest and most up-to-date information where people can learn and become informed. It's extremely important for Albertans to understand the real facts. As you know, there is a disinformation war going on with Putin, and we need to be present and we need to share that information. And our contribution to help Albertans is to provide this center, this support of information. And we're very excited about the group of people that have come forward. We know that we are part of many ethnic groups. There are Eastern Europeans, many Eastern Europeans here. Ukrainians are one of 350,000 here in Alberta, but there are Polish and Jewish and other ethnic groups that reside here. And as you've indicated, when we are just the front line where the battle of democracy is beginning, and we need to make sure that people understand that this may not end at Ukraine. And our committee is positioned to help inform Albertans from an Alberta perspective and to educate others to help inform them about the current situation and the aggression on Ukraine. Again, I want to thank you very much for your support. We are very deeply honored.
Well, that concludes our formal portion of the program this evening. I want to thank you all for coming. For our guests, I'll ask that Heather and Jared direct people into the Windsor room, and while media is finishing up here. Thank you.